Hey there, this is Alex Kluget. I'm here from Toronto Home Experts. I'm here to dive into the January 2023 Toronto real estate market update. Okay, so this month actually we have some very interesting data to go through, and it doesn't tell you the complete picture of what's happening with the Toronto real estate, but it does give us a snapshot, and I think it is potentially setting the tone for what we're going to expect for this first half of the year, right? So I'll get into what I think shortly, but really these numbers are just for for our analytical purposes. And, it actually, I want to compare that to what I'm seeing as an active agent in this marketplace to see what we're seeing and how does that compare against some of these numbers. So let's dive right in. Okay, so sales volume, unsurprisingly, is down from where we were last year. Last year was the second best January on record for sales volume, and this is the second worst we have on record for sales volume. So, is this cause for panic? No, it's not. It's not surprising. It's a little lower than I thought we'd be, but again, like not unexpected. And really, what I'm seeing is there's a lack of inventory. I think that's really the moral of the story when we're talking about January. And typically, what happens in January, a lot of buyers say, my goal is in 2023 is to buy property or upsize or whatever it might be. But typically, people set their goals in January, and so there's a lot of like activity in terms of like viewings and so forth, and but inventory tends to rise throughout the closer we get to spring. So, I'm not too worried about like these sales volumes, but it is the second lowest on record. If you're wondering, like, what's the worst? Like, what's the lowest? January was actually January 2008. 2009. So that was just shortly after the financial crisis that we experienced in call it Q3, Q4 of 2008. So January, we're seeing some of that spillover effect. So anyways, that's what we're looking at the sales volume from that perspective. Active listings, unsurprisingly, are high. They're up, 9,300, which is, not really cause for concern yet. If we start seeing that active listings rise and the sales volume not pacing at the same rate, then that's something that might be cause of concern from a price standpoint. Typically what happens is, once you get more inventory or more listings on the market and there's not enough sales to eat into that inventory, typically prices drop. But we haven't seen that yet, which is super curious, and I'm going to get into my theory shortly. But yeah, so we're up on the active listings, which is not entirely surprising. But on the new listing side, we are at only 7,700 for the month of January, which is actually quite encouraging. And the reason I say that is, one of the key metrics that I look at in the market is what's happening with sales to new listings ratio. And quick math on this, we're just under, call it high 30s in the percentage terms, probably just under that, under 40%. So, that's actually pretty good. And, I know this has been a tough market over the last year. It's changed a lot. But, really when we're talking about a deep buyer's market, we're well below that, 39, 40% sales to new listings ratio typically. Like we're typically in the kind of high 20s, low 30s. So we're not there yet. But that's something that we're going to carefully watch out for this spring. Because I think really, January, you can't take too much from these numbers and extrapolate it over a 12-month period. But what we want to do is take, the next 3-4 months, and that's really going to set the tone for what to expect in the spring. But, these numbers are, again, a little difficult to discern too much information out of because, as I said earlier, there's a lack of inventory. And really what we're seeing from a inventory standpoint is the quality properties, whether it's a condo or a freehold, are selling. Like, particularly if a property is well presented, like staged or photographed, and has like great presentation, it's going to get a lot of attention in this market just because there's not a lot of quality listings yet. And I think that's going to change. I think we're going to see a lot more come on the market in February and March. And so that might ease a little bit of the congestion, what I mean by lack of inventory, but we'll see. Anyway, stay tuned for next month's video and my analysis on that. Okay, so average price. As we know, prices have been trending down since basically March of last year. And, month or year over year, we're down 16%, which is, for the Toronto Real Estate Board average. But what I find more fascinating is when we're looking at what's happening with interest rates over that same period of time, this graph says it all. Okay, so where we were last year, the prime rate was just over 2. I think it was around 2.5. And now we're well into the high 6s, and that's a pretty steep increase. And we've never seen variable rates increase at such a sharp level, in the history of variable rate increases. So that's a little bit. So one thing I'm looking at this, and yes, rates have increased, and yes, it's putting pressure on mortgage renewals, new mortgages, like buyers qualify for less because the rates are so much higher. But what I find fascinating, and so look at this graph. So we saw a huge spike in April, and then again another one in July, and then we've also seen some pretty steady increases since then. So typically, what happens is when prices go up, when rates go up, prices come down. But look at this next graph. Here's where average prices, as I said, peak was February, March, and we saw a pretty steep decline up until July, and it's been basically flat ever since then. So, that is surprising in the sense that I would have, if you would have shown me those two graphs, and say, okay, the prime rate and then average price, I would have said, no, that can't be right, because typically we would have expected a much larger drop. But I find it encouraging to see that our prices have basically stabilized since, call it, July. One cause of concern, though, I will say, is if you watch my video from last month, I predicted that we would get a slight increase in average price from December 2022 to January 2023. We did not. There was an average percentage decrease in prices for the Greater Toronto Area for 1.4%. So is that a huge red flag? No, it's 1 month. But typically what we see from December to January, at least for the last 20 Januaries, we saw 14 of those, we saw an average price increase. We didn't see that. I expected to see that based on kind of the activity I'm seeing, or I was seeing at the time. But I do expect, based on activity and prices that have happened in the last, we're now middle February, so last 2 weeks, I do expect us to see an average price increase month over month, comparing from January to February of 2023. Now, what's interesting is we're actually seeing quite a few multiple offers, and that, I think, is surprising a lot of buyers in the marketplace. And it goes back to what I said earlier about the lack of quality of inventory. So there's a lot of competition for fewer listings. And so we're not seeing that across all price points in all neighborhoods. What we're seeing that is typically on the entry level, whether that's like entry level condos, entry level townhouses, and entry level freehold. Like, all those markets are very, very active. Once we get into the luxury segment, it's a little bit different, obviously, but those markets are highly, highly competitive, and that'll be fascinating to watch. Am I expecting multiple offers to be the norm this spring? I do not. Is it possible that we're going to see multiple offers, present in, a percentage in listings this spring? I do expect that. So anyways, let's fascinating to watch, fascinating to track, but interesting that what we're seeing that now, being that, we're, call it middle of February in 2023. So days on market, unsurprisingly, is up to 29 days. It's not, this number is not screaming to me that we're in a massive buyer's market. Once we're up over the 40 days on market range, that's when we've really tilted. Yes, of course, it is still what I would call a buyer's market in the true sense of the word or definition, according to real estate pundits. But by the same token, we were in an extremely active market last January. And so 29 is still what I would consider healthy in that. But what I do expect actually for February is that probably that number is going to decline a little bit based on what I'm seeing in the first 2 weeks. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't get a chance to watch my predictions video that I recorded for 2023, be sure to watch that. We've gotten a ton of amazing comments and feedback from that. And this is where I go and make some predictions based on what I believe will happen this year in Toronto real estate. So anyways, hope you enjoy. Keep the questions coming. We love the feedback. And we look forward to seeing you again next month. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.